Hi everyone, and welcome to this month's community call. I'm glad you could all join, and let's go quickly over the agenda of today. So as usual, we'll first have an update from the Hasura side. At the beginning, Phil will talk about server updates. Then Tiru will talk about generally product updates and features that we will be working on in the near future. Rishi will have an update on actions, which will be very exciting, I think, for all the people who've been waiting for this feature. And finally, I will talk about Hasura and community as the end of our Hasura update. Then again, we'll have a community demo, which is why I'm very excited. So Johan will talk about serverless deployment of Hasura on Nhost. So we are very glad that you are with us, Johan, and we're looking forward to your demo. Now, Phil, if you're ready to get started, I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, yep, I'll share my screen. I don't think I can turn my camera on, unfortunately. Hopefully you can all see my screen at this point.
Yes.
The whole slide deck I'm going to go through quickly on the server updates. I just have two main features that I want to talk about on this update. The first one is a change to the update check constraints, which is in addition to the check constraints that you may be familiar with from insert permissions on tables. And then the second one is catalog downgrades and how we support those in the latest version. Okay, so the first one is update check constraints, as I say. So if you're familiar with the way we do insert check permissions, you may know this property filter. Sorry about the noise. There's this property filter which provides preconditions on new data going into an updated row. So we can think about this as defining an expression on our updated rows that we would substitute into an update clause. If we were writing this in SQL, it would be like saying update, set some fields, and then it would specify the where part of our update clause. As you can imagine, that represents a precondition. We end up either updating a row or not updating a row, and what you'll often see is either you'll get the row back or you'll just get an empty set of affected rows because the precondition didn't hold. And what you're going to be able to do now in the latest version is, in addition to filter, there's a new property called check that you can provide on the API for update permissions on a table. And instead of preconditions, this one's going to provide a post condition. So after the update is finished, we're going to run a different expression, possibly. It could be the same expression as the filter, or it could be a separate expression in some cases. And we're going to throw an exception and abort the transaction if the post condition doesn't hold. Okay. So I'm just going to give a quick demo of this, and I'll just quickly walk through. The schema to explain the use case. We've got 3 tables. It's just a simple sort of organization structure with teams and users belonging to those teams. So I have 2 teams in my demo. There's marketing and engineering, and I have 4 people, 2 of which are marketing, 2 of which are engineering. Each user belongs to 1 team. And then I have articles that can be published by different team members. Articles like titles, they're created by a user, and they can be promoted or not. So promoted is a Boolean on the article table. Okay. And what I want to do is have a role called author, which has a precondition and a post condition that are the same condition. So precondition applied before updates, post condition applied after updates. And what I want to assert is that users in the author role can only update articles from users in their own team. And the post condition, they can only modify an article's author to set it to another user in their own team. Okay, so we can express this using the same Boolean expression, once as a precondition, once as a post condition. And it's going to basically say that if I look up the user's team and then look over all of the users that belong to that team, the user ID that I update the article to must be one of those users. Okay, both before and after. Okay, that's catalog downgrades. Okay, so I'm just going to switch window over here. Let me increase font size. Hopefully this is readable. So just as a little demo, all I've done here is track the tables in the schema that I just showed, and tracked all the relationships. There's nothing more interesting than that except for the permissions. So if we go over to data and see the permissions. So if we look at article permissions, you see we've got two roles. Insert permissions are exactly as you would have set them up before. Simply saying that the created by on a new article has to be the user that's creating it, which makes sense. And the update permissions, you'll see here so this is maybe a little confusing because, this is the UI, so showing it backwards instead of saying delete's the same as update, we've got update's the same as delete, but we're saying that if we go from user to team and back to users, so this is users in the same team as the current user, then the current logged in user ID has to be one of those user IDs. Okay. The reason this may be slightly confusing, and we're working through figuring out what the UI should be, is that the previous wording used the word check here because that was the word we'd always used in insert and update permissions. But really this is referring to the precondition. So this should say filter. When the UI is complete for this feature, there will be a check and a filter, precondition and a postcondition in this UI. So for now, because you can't specify both, what I've done to set up this little demo is I exported the metadata and then edited the metadata and re-imported it here just to show the feature. So if we look at the update permissions, you'll see there's not only filter, which is the condition I just showed, user team, users ID is the current user ID, but the same condition is specified as the post condition in check as well. So the documentation shows how you can use the API, the metadata API, to set this permission manually, or you can do it this way, like I've done, just export and re-import the metadata with changes. But eventually, as I say, the UI is going to provide a proper way to do this. But for now, unfortunately, we have to just set it up this way because it's a very new feature. So with that, we can go back to GraphQL and just show a little workflow. So we could have, for example, one of the engineering team members, so that one of those users, Donna, inserting a new article called Hasura update permissions. So we can do that, and nothing new here. We just see the get back the inserted data. The next step is what if somebody in the marketing department, so remember this was somebody in the engineering department wanted to create this article. Somebody in the marketing department, so for example I have a user called Fred, could try to run this marketing edit mutation, which is just going to set the promoted flag to true, but they're not going to be able to do that because the precondition is not going to hold. Okay, so we're going to get 0 affected rows back, which is what we would expect. We would have been able to set up this precondition before. So Fred would have to switch to admin, for example, to be able to do that. And then he can do it. So nothing's changed here. Again, this is just preconditions like we always had. So we switch back to the author role, go to Donna again in the engineering department. Another thing Donna might want to do is reassign the owner. So if she tries to, for example, set the created by ID to Fred, who is in the marketing department, then that's going to fail, and we're going to see a check constraint violation. Okay, because we can only change, like the permission said, we can only change the created by user to somebody in the same team as yourself. Okay. So a second limitation of this that we're aware of and working on a fix for is that the error message is sort of not fantastic. And what we would really like here is to say which check constraint failed, and maybe the row, encode as JSON the row or the primary key of the row and show the data that failed this constraint. So this is another thing that we have on our list of issues that we'd like to improve. But for example, Donna can reassign to Bob, who is another person in the engineering team, and that works just fine. Okay, so created by is set to Bob. So this is a precondition that's enforcing the rule that we saw here, and then a post condition enforcing this new type of rule that you have to assign articles only reassign them only to people in the same team as yourself. Okay, so this is a new feature for permissions, but it's possible that we could do more work on it. So we've had some requests for more complicated expressions where, for example, check constraints, the post conditions can depend on the old values before the update in the row. That's something we can't do right now, but I think we would like to find a way to do that eventually. So, you know, there's a number of ways in which we could extend the permissions language with these check constraints and filters. So if you have a use case for this, we would like to know, you know, what your use case is and how we can fit it into this language. So please do let us know. Okay, so I'll move on to the next thing, which is catalog downgrades, and this one's a little quicker. So if you have used multiple versions of Hasura GraphQL engine, then you'll know that the catalog schema, which stores sort of metadata relevant to your Postgres database, has to be upgraded when you upgrade to a new version of GraphQL engine. So this actually happens automatically when you go through an upgrade. It'll happen when the application starts up. However, if you have an error or running a version or and you run into problems with the version, for example, you're going to have to roll back to a previous version. But if there were schema changes in the catalog, you need to roll back the schema changes as well. And those downgrades are not automatic. So in the previous versions, what you would have to do is run these SQL scripts by hand, one by one. So if there were, you know, five upgrades to the catalog, you would have to, in reverse, run 5 SQL scripts. And you could have gotten those out of the documentation, but obviously that's not ideal. It's pretty cumbersome. So we've added a new command to the GraphQL engine executable. So instead of how you would run GraphQL engine serve to run the server, now you would run GraphQL engine downgrade. I'll just show this in the console quickly. So here it is. Just like with the serve command, you want to specify the database connection string, and then the executable and the downgrade command. So if I just run this with no arguments, you'll see that you can actually specify lots of different flags to say which version you want to downgrade to. So you would pick one of these options. There's going to be one for every version, and you can autocomplete these and see the list in the help text. So you can specify a release name to downgrade to, or if you know the precise catalog version, which is more of an advanced use case, then you can provide that using this option here. And if you want to run, if you just want to get the SQL that you would run without actually running it against your database, then you can use this dry run flag, and that's just going to print out the SQL. So for example, I can say downgrade to version 1.0 with the dry run flag, and it will just show me the SQL that I would run, that would be run for me if I got rid of the dry run flag. So I can run this myself or just remove the flag and have it carry on. So hopefully if you have any errors or issues with beta versions, this kind of thing, this makes it quite a lot easier now to easily roll back. One thing to note is that you do have to run this against the newer version of GraphQL engine because the SQL scripts are stored in the executable. So the workflow would be that you would run the newer executable in downgrade mode to get the SQL or to run the SQL, and then switch the executable and restart the server process. Okay, so that was my demo for catalog downgrades, and I think that's about it for server updates this time.
Thank you so much, Phil, for your demo and presentation. And information for everyone as usual, if you have questions, you can always ask on the chat and we will try our best to answer as quickly as possible. So if there are no questions for Phil, then next up would be Tiru with product updates.
Hello. Wait, Marian, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see your screen too.
Okay, awesome. So hi everyone. So I have like 4 product updates. The first of which is the progress on remote joins, and After the merge of actions, remote joins is the next thing that we are like working in full velocity to merge. And if you see this, we have already merged this with master. So in case you want the latest and the latest remote joins with all the latest features of Hasura, which is already published, you can try the preview app today as well. So that's remote joins. The second thing that I want to talk about, the next three things that I want to talk about are like RFCs that we have published. And these are things that we are going to prioritize in the next few weeks. And these are like very good and useful features. So in case you have any feedback or you want to see like what's upcoming in the next few weeks, feel free to check these out. The first one is single row mutation. So we did have a select by PK field in query before, and you could just get a single object instead of getting an array of objects, and that was a very good convenience field. And we decided to do that for mutations as well, right? So here we have an insert one field, we have a delete by PK field, and we have an update author by PK field as well. And this actually has already been implemented. So you'll see that in Rishi's demo further in the call. But yeah, in case you have any thoughts about these, feel free to check this RFC. The second thing is much bigger and very interesting. It's called nested updates. The RFC for that was also recently published. And you can see that here. There were a lot of issues relating to nested updates, but essentially the use case is that we want to give the same API or a similar API which you already have for inserts, wherein you could create an author and also their related articles in the same mutation. With like a single mutation, you could do this, but now you can start doing this for updates as well. For example, if you have an authors table and you wanted to update an author, you can now start doing a lot of things with the relationships as well. By a lot of things, I mean everything that you could possibly do, which means you could insert a related article, a new article, you could update an existing article, you could delete an existing article, and you can remove the relationship as well, right? By making the foreign key nullable or something similar, right? Similarly, you can link it as well. Like you can make something which is already existing a relationship for this author that you're updating. So this is nested updates, a very useful feature, and it's been RFC'd, and the work will start in the next few days or a week or so. So that's also related to the previous RFC that I showed about single row mutations. So these are like kind of related. The final thing that I want to show you is a long pending feature request, and there were like a lot of discussion around this, and internally it's called multiple roles, but for those who have used Hasura, you already know that we have multiple roles. You can specify different roles for different behaviors, for different permission expressions, but now you can use multiple roles in composition in a single query. So that is what this actually means, and I think we will make that clearer going forward. But in short, let's talk about what this feature actually allows you to do. This feature allows you to basically break down your role-based the role-based system that you already have into more modular components and compose them however you want, maybe in a hierarchical fashion, or maybe in a more tractable, dry kind of a way, right? So for example, the biggest use case for this was that the permission system was becoming very complex to maintain as you use Hasura, because for example, if you added a column to a table, you would have to go to each of your roles and maybe change or add an expression for that particular column. This is kind of a redundant activity, you might feel. So having this at one place makes it much easier. And there are a few other cases which are described here where sometimes you don't actually have data present in your Postgres schema itself. For you to use a single row kind of a technique to express your permission rules correctly. And that's because the data itself is not present in the DB. So how would you even create relationships, right? So there are ways to work around these, but those are all kind of not very very nice. Like they kind of look slightly hacky or slightly clunky, right? So that is the second example of what multiple roles can really help you in doing. And I'll just jump straight to the proposal, which is quite short because this is just for reads. And it is that instead of Hasura role, you can also send Hasura roles with the list of roles that user has. And the permission system would be additive in nature. This is also Postgres's default behavior, if you're familiar with RLS and all that. So basically what you can think of it is that rows would actually be an OR of each of the rules specified in each of the roles, and columns would be like the unions, duplicates would be merged together, and aggregates and limits would be handled appropriately, considering the existence of all the rules. So yeah, so here is, and along with the proposal and the motivation examples, we also have a sample modeling of the solution and with multiple roles in the picture. So you might notice that it's very easy to now manage roles, keep them in sync, change them, and have them inherited, and so on and so forth. So that is multiple roles. So these were the 3 RFCs which would be worked on in the next few weeks, and hopefully you would see many of these features in a release in the next community call. So that's it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tiru, for the product update. And next up is Rishi with an update on actions.
Hey, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a second, I'll share my screen. You all can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so hi, hope you're having a great time. So Actions is finally out. It is in, you can find Actions in 1.2.0 beta 1 release of Hasura GraphQL engine, and you can try it out. It's there in the docs. There's Actions and everything associated with it. You can try it out. Right. So in the last community call, I had presented Actions with the console using the console workflow. But as we heard from a lot of y'all that some of you don't like to use the UI, you want to run some commands and make things work. So we also, with Actions, we also launched the v2 config of the CLI. So if you have used the CLI before, this is what the directory structure looks like. There's a config.yaml at the top level, and there is a migrations directory, which will have all your migrations, and a metadata.yaml file, which will have a snapshot of your metadata, right? With v2, we have a config.yaml. We have the migrations directory for incremental database migrations, and we have a metadata directory which has your metadata spit out into multiple files, so that it is easier to scope out, and you can do everything you want to do without using the console from this directory itself. For example, firstly, I have an empty project right now, and I also have Hasura running at localhost 8080. And I also have one table here called user. So currently, if you see in tables.yaml, there's nothing because this is a fresh project. There are two important commands with associated to Hasura metadata. That is Hasura metadata apply and Hasura metadata export. Hasura metadata export gets the server's metadata into your local directory, and Hasura metadata applies whatever is present in your local directory onto the server, right? So I'm just quickly going to export the metadata from the server, right? Now if you see in tables.yaml, there is this table called user, because this is a track table in Hasura. I'll quickly just like show you how to untrack it. I just removed it. Oh, sorry. I just removed it, and I am running Hasura metadata apply. If I go here, the table has been untracked, right? Now I will track it again. Just a second. I'm so sorry. I got a phone call. So yeah, now I will just apply the metadata. And the metadata has been applied, and we hope to see the table track here. Yeah. So next thing is actions. How does it fit into actions, right? So we have like a very valid workflow for actions using the CLI. So firstly, last time I had presented two popular use cases of actions. Like firstly is like an entirely random piece of business logic that you would want to add to Hasura, and the second thing is you want to add some data validation or data enrichment for your before adding data to Hasura using GraphQL notations, right? So I'll just create a simple action first. There is a Hasura actions command. I'll just say Hasura actions create, add numbers, and it takes an argument numbers, which is an array of integers, and returns add result. I'll define add result as well, which has a field called sum and returns an integer. This is not required. Let me check for typos. And the action has been created. If you look in the database, if you look on the console, the action has been created, right? So, but we also want code gen, right? So we will first configure code gen, because with actions, you also have to write HTTP handlers, and writing all the boilerplate code for that is sort of tedious. So there is code gen also with Hasura. So let's first configure the code gen, which is a one-time thing. I'll just say Hasura actions use code gen. I'll do with Node.js Zite. I'll also clone a starter kit, and I want my code gen files to be generated at / directory. Right. So what that command did is it just went and updated the config.yaml with these things. It just added a code gen field under actions, and it updated the framework and outputted it. If you are familiar with the structure of config.yaml, you can do it yourself without running the command. So I'm just gonna update this to Node.js Zite and the API directory. And now I just do Hasura actions code gen add numbers. Before that, I'll just start this. So this directory was cloned. Node.js Zite directory was the starter kit that was cloned for this framework. So I will just install and start. So I have a local Node.js server running on my system, and now I will do code gen. Hasura actions code gen add numbers.
No, different directory.
What? Hello?
I think
think you're in a different direction.
Oh, right. I'm so sorry. Right. Yeah. So I will run Hasura actions code gen, add numbers, and the code gen files would have been generated at Node.js API. If you see add numbers here, there is this there's this boilerplate Zite code that that was auto generated. You see numbers as the argument, so that has been destructured from the input. Now I will just return let sum equal to 0, numbers for each sum plus equals 10, right? And I'm just gonna return sum here. Save this, and I'll try to run the mutation. Numbers is say 1, 2, 3, 4, and sum. You see the sum of the numbers was returned from the thing. I just add something more, and you get the sum. Right. This was a sample mutation of entirely different business logic, which has nothing to do with the database. So another very common use case is that whenever you are making a mutation to Hasura, you want to add some validation to it, right? So currently we have a mutation here. We have a table in our database called user. So for that, we have insert user one mutation, which helps us insert just one user, not many users. As Tiru said, we have single row mutations now. If you look at it, there is insert user one, update user by PK, and delete user by PK. So if we want to insert a user, we want to take age as a number. Let's take it from age, email, let's take it from email, and let's take it from name. I'll call this user, and I'll assign the variables age as int, email as string, and name as string. And finally, I'll ask for ID, age, email, name. Let's try this mutation out first. If I do this, it works, right? Now, I want to add some validation for the email. See, currently it's rishi@hasura.io. If I make it this, it'll still work, but it should not work because it should respect the email format, right? So we'll just wrap this mutation with using an action. So just instead of doing derive action here, I'm just going to copy this, and I say Hasura actions create, insert user, derive from, right? Oh, something went wrong. Okay, there seems to be a problem.
Should I put the name of the action?
What?
Or the name of the action?
Right. No, I added it here. That's fine. Okay, there seems to be a problem, but I'll just show this using the console workflow. So I will call this. Yeah, and I'm gonna create this, right? And there's code gen here. I'm just gonna copy this. Right, and next I'll go and try to make the mutation. So this was the auto-generated code. I will add some validation to it right now. We have destructured the email from the request body. So I'll just add if email match. I have to set the status to 400. Oh, that's it. And the mutation will be insert user, age, email, and I'll say this. Yeah, and you get a message saying invalid email. And if I just say this, just a second.
Rishi, I think you're not using the variables in the query.
I'm right. I'm sorry. Right. Yeah. And if I do this, it should fail. Okay. Yeah, that's it from my demo. Something off on the CLI, or maybe my configuration is not right. I will check it out. Cool. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rishi, on this update on actions. And next, I will talk a little bit about community. So if you are thinking about speaking about Hasura, or if you already have plans to do so, we just want to let you know that we will support you wherever you need it. So if you plan to apply for a conference, we will be happy to help you with the CFP process, to help you review your CFP papers. Also, if you need resources, like we have slides and videos that will help you prepare for your conference or meetup talk, so just get in touch and we'll be happy to help. If you organize a meetup, we'll also be happy to send you a Hasura t-shirt and to send stickers and swag for all of your attendees. And if you're running a meetup and you need sponsoring for drinks and food, we'll also be happy to help out. Like basically anything where you need help, we will be able to assist. For example, if you get accepted to a conference and you need travel assistance, just get in touch and we'll try to help. Apart from speaking at meetups and conferences, there are also other things that we support. For example, workshops. So a lot of community folks are doing workshops with the help of our Learn tutorials. So we'll also be happy to give you a briefing about how to conduct these workshops. And finally, we'll have the Technical Writer Program, which is a paid program for blog posts. So if you're interested in writing a blog post, just get in touch and then we can figure out what will be a topic that you will be interested to write about, and also that like a topic that we would like to have content on. So if you're interested in any of this, or even if you can think of any other way that you need our support, just go on this link. I will post this in a minute in the chat as well, and we'll happy to help out with anything. And finally, for the Hasura update, Tanmai has some updates to share as well.
Hi folks, before we get to Johan's demo and Nhost, we just announced our Series A fundraise, so super excited. And we're going to, I wrote a small blog post on kind of what Hasura's roadmap and what work we're going to be doing over the next year. So please do have a look at that. If you just head to blog.hasura.io and search for Hasura 2020, you should see that come up. Mainly our plans are to kind of keep working on increasing our support for GraphQL and Postgres features, and also starting work on other databases, especially databases that we're seeing coming from some of our enterprise users and people with a lot of existing databases. For example, MySQL. There's a tremendous amount of existing workload on MySQL that folks want GraphQL and the Hasura experience with. So that's going to be a fairly challenging undertaking, and the time that we have, and we'll be able to spend effort and do a good job with adding support for other databases without compromising what we're doing with Postgres. The most important thing for us over the next one and a half years, with your help, will be our ability to kind of grow the Hasura community, and kind of grow a nice, positive, passionate community around Hasura, and help you achieve success with what kind of stuff you're building with Hasura, but also learn from you and in terms of what you'd like to see in Hasura and be a part of the Hasura process. If you recall, if you look at the community call from the last time, you'll see some ways that you can get involved in the Hasura feature process as well. We have an RFC guideline that we put out, and that Alex has covered in the last community call. You should see that on YouTube. That's one of the easiest ways to kind of get involved with shaping Hasura and kind of the features that get released in Hasura and when they get released. So super excited, and thank you so much for your support. And hope to keep seeing you in these community calls on Discord and on Twitter. With that, I think Marion, you can introduce Johan and we can get started.
Yes, thank you, Tanmai. So now it's time for our community demo. We are very excited to have Johan with us, and he will talk to us about serverless deployment of Hasura on Nhost. Please, Johan, if you're ready, you can start.
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen. Hope you can hear me all right. Required question for these kind of calls. You can hear me all right, yeah?
Yes.
All right, so yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Nhost. And Nhost is basically a development platform for building secure and scalable mobile and web apps. And Hasura has a very central piece in our stack. But before I'm going to talk too much about it, I want to show this picture. It makes me very happy every time I see it. This is me visiting you guys at Hasura last GraphQL Asia, and I'm so sorry that I couldn't come this year, but I will make up for it, I promise. All right, so Nhost. Nhost is basically me being frustrated at Firebase. So I figured I start Nhost and just do what Firebase does, but with SQL and GraphQL instead, where of course Hasura has a central role. We also provide authentication and storage out of the box. And I recorded a video here that I'm going to show where I walk through what Nhost is, and I'm going to comment it. while we watch it. So we have a web console here that where you can create your project. Once we host everything, we host the database, we host Hasura. You have full access to everything, but there is like a neat UI where you can manage everything. And we provide authentication and storage based on S3 Minio. You can create your own storage rules. They're all connected to the users. You can upgrade, downgrade your Hasura version, make all environment variable settings from here as well. So in the Hasura console, I'm going to show you a little bit here about the users table here. That so when your Hasura instance is deployed, we automatically populated it with some authentication tables, so that you can start using it right away. So you see here, everything is you can have your local users in your tables here. I'm going to create a customers table and just show you how you can link it to the users table. So we make all the correct foreign key relations here. And we want to create a couple of users here related to this. Sorry, we're going to create some customers here related to this user. To make the name a little bit more obvious, customer 1, customer 2. And now we can inspect, or we can try the GraphQL out here in the Nhost console. So you can see in the top there, it says admin full write read. So we can see everything here. And if we make the same request with a logged in user, you see we got a permission error. So we need to fix that. So we make sure that the permissions are correct. We do the same request, everything works. So it's a quick way to test your GraphQL API as a specific user. And here I just want to show you how you can make the same request, but with different users. So I'm gonna add a third customer here for the second user I created, and do the same thing again here. Customer 1, customer 2, and then customer 3 for the last user I just created. And we provide, we're very inspired by Firebase. So we have our own JS SDK. So you can basically manage or use authentication and storage very easily. So you just use the backend URL here to configure or initialize your Nhost for your app, and you can use register, login, sign in anonymously, log out, on state change. For you who are familiar with Firebase, you recognize this. You can also upload files, delete files, etc. So I just want to quickly show here also. We have a React example that I'm going to show how easy it is to get started here. So we clone the repository, we install all modules. And what's happening? I think we were gonna configure this project. So as you can see, all URLs are already provisioned for you. We manage all certificates automatically for you. So it's a very quick and easy way to get started. And at last, the backend URL handling, authentication, and storage. So while the installation is finishing up, we're going to add 2 tables here, to do and files. And make sure we track all foreign key relations. Perfect. Okay, so we're about to start our web project here. And while that is loading, we can start implementing the permission rules here for the to-dos table. Make sure that when you create a new to-do, we populate the user ID field with the Hasura user ID permission session variable. Same thing here. Make sure that every user only can see his or her own to-dos. And now I think I'm going to log in with the account I created a minute ago. So we're logged in, and we can start adding to-dos to our app here. So this is a classic to-dos app that's getting some SMS at the meantime. Same thing with the files table here. Just setting the permissions right. Yeah, I had this is my girlfriend calling me, but it's fine. So adding the permissions here for the files table. Same thing here. Nhost and the SDK we have automatically handles all JWT tokens and everything for you. So we can just use the Hasura user ID when we create our permissions here. In the meantime, I can also mention that we like with Nhost SDK, refetch tokens is handled automatically in the background as well. All right, so I think there was some issue here with the permissions. Yeah, created. Let's just do everything. Yeah. Reload. All right. So I just want to show you here how we can upload a file, and we're gonna hit a little bit of an error here. So I want to show you this first. So we're trying to upload the file here to our storage backend, but we're not allowed to write here. So we're going to make a little fix of our rules. So we're going to allow everything basically. This is not so secure, but it works. Here we can also write our own rules to specify who is allowed to read and write where, basically. Anyway, so now everything is allowed. So we upload our file. You can see it gets uploaded correctly. The URL is backend at nhost.io. And we can see the same file being available here in our browser. So we're going to delete these local users here. And I want to show you one last thing. And it's in the sign-in method. We allow anonymous users, and you can also enable signing in with GitHub, Google, and Facebook. So we're going to do a quick demo here on how you can log in your users with GitHub. So creating I think we're going to create a new app here. We name it new Nhost auth, and we're running locally here for the moment. And so we provide a authorization callback URL here. And you just need to enable the GitHub and copy these two secret client ID and the client secret, save, and provide where you want your users to be redirected once they are logged in. So, and also we can specify different URLs if the login works or not. All right, this is going to take just a few seconds to start working. So here I'm just showing you now we're logged in as an anonymous user, and next we're going to log in with GitHub here. So as you can see, we are logged in with GitHub. And everything works. And also you can see in the users table here, yeah, we have one anonymous user and one user from GitHub. All right, that was all for me. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Johan. Thank you for all your work, and also thank you for presenting in our community call. So let me share my screen again. Yes, it's already time again to say thank you. So first of all, thank you to all my colleagues who presented and did their demos. And again, thank you to Johan for your community demo. As usual, the call was recorded and will publish on YouTube in case you missed parts of it or in case you want to share with a friend. And we want to make our community calls better. So please, if you have 1 or 2 minutes to give feedback, go on this link. I will share it just in a second on the chat as well. And give us feedback on this call, and also let us know what you would like to see in the next call, because we'll take this feedback very seriously, and based on this, we will plan our next calls. If you did either like a contribution to Hasura, or if you built a very cool project with Hasura, which I'm sure you did, then you should also go on this link, community call demo, and fill in the form to present in one of our next community calls. And then you can be the next person doing the community demo. Otherwise, that's it from our side. The next community call will be on the 25th of March. And you can already register now on the link below, which I will also share in a second. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and see you next month. Bye.
Bye, folks.